Welcome to this episode of Locked In. In this episode, I'm going to be doing part 7 of turning my gravel bike into a 90s mountain bike. If you've been watching this series, I've done a ton of changes to my Poseidon Redwood, which I'm now calling the Radwood. And in today's episode, I'm going to be going over a few updates on things that I've changed, if you can't already tell already, as well as one part that I'm going to be swapping on this to change something up. So first off, let's do a little bit of an update and a little bit of housekeeping on what's changed on this bike if you can't tell already. First off, from the last episode that you've seen, I have changed the wheel size. So I am now trying this bike out on some 29er or 700C wheels. These are my Pateron Driver Pro 2.2s, which I recently did a review of. You can check the link in the description below if you want to hear about some more about these tires themselves. I've actually really liked this bike as a 29er, and I'll give you a few of my little insights. I may be switching back to 650. I like really playing with this bike, but basically the big difference I really noticed for me is I actually really enjoy the handling change going to a 29er on the Poseidon. I think it really did make the bike feel more stable, and obviously going bigger wheel is going to be a byproduct of that, but I've liked how it changed this bike as far as the handling characteristics. Now, I did notice a lack of turn-in response. I did have to go a little bit wider on a lot more corners and kind of tuck more in, more like a line you would take on a road bike or a gravel bike. And so that's something that I had to kind of readjust my brain because I was so used to how it handled with the 650s. Now going down from a 2.6 or a 2.4 650 to a 2.2 29er, I did feel a little bit of harshness, more harshness in the trails riding. So that's going to lead me into the seat post change. And as you saw in the last video, I did have the Trans X Kitsuma dropper post, which I did have a review for as well, but that's now been exchanged for the Redshift Sports shock stop seat post. This seat post offers 35 millimeters of travel, and I have a review for this as well. And I think this really suits this setup. With this going on, I really think this is basically a rigid 29er, and I think this seat post really does kind of dampen out that rear end, because I did notice a big difference with the dropper seat post on most of the more mild trails. I just was getting bounced around a lot more or activating the dropper on sections that I didn't really need it. So having this seat post allows me to put the power down, especially on flat, faster roads that are maybe undulating, to really smoothen it out. And if you haven't noticed from the last time, I do have a Redshift Stem on here as well in their new 80 millimeter size. I've loved this stem. I may be playing with the elastomers in it. I did set it up for the recommended rider weight for a flat bar setup, but I have noticed that there's been a few times where I've actually bottomed out the stem and I could hear it kind of click or clunk. So I may go one up on the rating for the elastomer that's built into this. But that's going to be basically most of the changes. Like I said, if you are building up one of these Poseidon Redwoods, don't be scared of running at 29er, because this bike does obviously come stock with 650B wheels. I really like it. It obviously is going to increase the standard of height. So if that's something that you're concerned about, that may be something that you maybe want to be mindful of, or maybe go down to a 2.0 or a 50C 700C tire like the WTB Venture or the Pateron Gravel Kings. Both those come in a 50C to drop that overall height a little bit, but I do really enjoy this bike on this wheel setup. Now, the thing I'm going to be changing out is going to be the handlebar. I really like this fun Black Ace bar, and it's been really good to me, but being a traditional flat bar for this bike, you basically have to be almost in this attack position and kind of over the front a lot, and I really wanted to try something a little bit different to alter my hand positions. It was basically hurting my wrists unless I really sat in that position for a long time, and I wasn't always wanting to ride like that. If I wanted to relax more, and I'm assuming for more bike packing trips where I'm not using this bike as aggressively and I want to kind of relax a little bit more, I wanted a handlebar that would kind of give me a little bit more relaxed wrist position, and I think I found the right solution. But don't worry, I'm going to have a full review for all of the fun components that are on this bike as a whole, so make sure to turn notifications on so you can see that when the video comes out. So the bar I'm going to be changing is going to be the Ritchey Kyote handlebar, and as you can see, this is a really different bar compared to a traditional mountain bar. It can be run either upside down in a downward position or have its up sweep in this position. But as you can see here, I really like just the natural wrist position this puts me in. This is an 800 millimeter uncut bar, so I may cut this down to the 785 width that it's going to be on this bike, because I already have trimmed the brake cables. I really don't want to do that again, but I'm basically going to be testing this bar out. I really think this is going to make it more comfortable for me being able to ride a little bit more relaxed, and I really want to see what the riding characteristics are of this bar versus a traditional flat bar. This is usually saved for something that's going to be more bike packing friendly, but I want to see how it bodes against a traditional flat bar on the trails that I've taken this bike on, and do a direct comparison later down the line on the channel. So I'm done with the updates. Let's put this bar on and see my initial thoughts. So unfortunately, these cables are way too short. As you can see, this bar really does throw everything out more forward, And even though these are only 15 mil longer than my other bars, because of the shape of the sweep, you are gonna have to recable this. So if you are getting these bars and your cables have already been kind of trimmed to fit whatever flat bar you're going to, I'm gonna give you a 90% chance you're probably gonna have to recable the bike. Now, I already knew that going in, so luckily I do have a full set of compressionless brake housing, which should improve the braking on my TRP HYRD calipers I am running on this bike. So I luckily ordered that ahead of time, so hopefully I have enough cable housing to run this bike, and I'm gonna have to replace the shift housing as well. All right, so as you can see here, I have all the brake lines mocked up. This is I think the third time I've cabled this bike. And basically what I did was I repurposed the rear cable for the front, but these bars, just the initial feel of this, I really like the angle that this is sitting at. I think it's gonna make this bike a lot more fun and playful and just more comfortable on my wrist as far as riding this even on trail. Now the stem length may or may not change because it does throw my body position up a little bit different, a little bit more forward. So I'll have to see how that feels with the 80 on here and leave these uncut. So we'll be seeing what that ends up feeling like on the trail, and that'll be in a different video. And lastly, before I finish this thing up and give you my final thoughts, I wanted to give you another update I forgot about mentioning is how is the undercoating or texture coating going on the chainstay and the down tube and underneath the fork. Honestly, progress report so far, it's had a few hundred miles on it, and in aggressive dirt trails that you've seen in my videos lately with this bike, and it's held up really, really well. It was definitely a lot softer for that first day or two, and I didn't think it was gonna harden up a lot, but it really did. And I think this is honestly a super viable option that's really low budget. And if you want something that's really durable and you don't have to worry about clear bra on your bike, because this is honestly way more durable than that is, but obviously the prep time for this does take a little bit longer if you are comparing the two as far as time and labor goes. But let's finish this bike up and I'll give you my first impressions on this new bar setup. All right, so I didn't want to bore you with more bike cabling, but I have this bike finally recabled, like I said, for like the third time at this point. Have just kind of test fitted these bars. I'm actually gonna go out on a ride right after I finish this video to see how they feel, but initially just sitting on them, this back sweep and angle that they sit at put my wrist at a beautiful angle, and it's way better to just feel that kind of relaxed, neutral, natural position instead of kind of having to go straight like you would with a straight bar. So I think I'm really gonna like these. Yes, this is gonna be adding some weight compared to the carbon risers that I did have, but realistically, that was the main concern for me, was just trying to see if I could add some more comfort. I think that this kind of forward position, I may or may not wanna wrap these. I've seen guys do that on like a Jones bar for something just kind of rest your hands on, or getting those togs. So I may experiment with something like that, because I think for longer flat sections, I could see myself kind of leaning forward and sitting on those, but we'll have to see. And like I had mentioned, make sure to turn notifications on, because I will be doing a full review for these bars after I get some more miles on them later down the line. But I'm super stoked on how this bike is just kind of my experimental project, and I want to put it out there. If there's anybody out there that wants to help donate to this channel, I am looking for a suspension fork for this. If you have a non-boost front fork, no more than I'd say 100 millimeters of travel. Anything longer than that I think would be really bad. But I've been wanting to do it. I just don't honestly have the money to afford a new one. So if anybody has a fork laying around that's, again, non-boost, that would be perfect for this setup. It does have to be through axle, 12 millimeter. Obviously I know is not a thing, but I can get reducers if it is a 15 to step it down to a 12. But that is something I kind of really want to try out on this bike. I have been looking at other fork options from Whiskey. That would be a carbon replacement. I reached out to them and they were unable to help me with that. But I really want to see what this bike would be as like a true mountain bike in a sense, given its suspension. So let me know in the comments below, or reach out to me and DM me on Instagram if you're interested in that. Links for that are in the description below. And lastly, let me know what your thoughts are. This thing has definitely changed a lot since it has lost its drop bars, and I've really been enjoying it. Now, I have gotten the question of, am I gonna go back to drop bar? And I do have another product and handlebar setup that is coming in for review, that after I get some mileage on this and review these bars, I will be swapping this back to a drop bar and see what I think after riding it as a flat bar for this many miles. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and as well as support Locked In via my Spreadshirt Store, where I sell my Slow But Look Pro and is my Bike OK merchandise, as well as on Pateron, where I do offer one-on-one cycling consultations for my top 2 tier levels every single month. And lastly, thanks for watching this episode of Locked In.
Let's get locked in today. Bike tutorials are quick and